Fortunately or unfortunately for us, Sarri was behind a microphone again today, and there were a lot of headlines that came out of the many things that he said. I'm going to do my best here to kind of sum it up for you, right? He was asked about a plan B tactically. He responded, why? First of all, I want to do plan A very well. He said Eden Hazard is used to playing as an individual, now must play in a cooperative way. He defended Jorginho's role. He also defended his use of N'Golo Kante. He acknowledged that Gonzalo Higuain is not yet in top shape, and he said that he did not attack his players after the defeat to Bournemouth. Craig, I know you were adamant you wanted to hear the entirety of the Sarri press conference, but for timing reasons, we couldn't allow you to do that. So where do you want to start to unpack the latest statements here?
It just seems to be becoming more bizarre, almost by the day. But, you know, if there's a week he's maybe going to get away with it, it's this week because they're playing Huddersfield. It should be a home banker, I say should. Because they're a poor side, very, very poor side, and Chelsea are at home. I'll give him one thing, he's stubborn. I'll give him that.
And you can recognise stubborn.
Oh, yeah, I know a stubborn man when I see a stubborn man. And look, you know, I understand he wants to do things a certain way, and he's even talked about Barcelona and teams like that. Let's not put these sides in the same bracket and players as Barcelona and the way they did things, because they were just doing stuff that was on another level. The bottom line here is he's got to get results, and he's got to get them fast. Now, you had the Chelsea fans singing at Bournemouth, you don't know what you're doing. I don't subscribe to that. The guy clearly knows what he's doing, but at the moment, he just seems reluctant to make the changes that I think almost everybody else can see, and a lot of people are asking for, hence why he goes to a press conference, and most of the journalists are asking him about Hazard and Jorginho and the tactics, and basically he's doubling down.
Stevie, you've been pretty critical of Sarri. Was there anything just from today's stuff that jumped out at you?
Not really. Just the fact that he keeps opening his mouth and saying the wrong thing. You know, and that's what has made it. I called it a circus yesterday. Craig said bizarre today. But that's what makes it seem that way, because every single day this guy's on the back page saying something else that he shouldn't say.
Ale?
We look at a guy that I don't mind that he has his way of playing. And he is obviously very loyal to this way of playing because he has given him results in the past. And so therefore, this is what he wants to do. And that's fine. That's fine. What I'm most critical of and would be most concerned about is the fact that the in-game adjustments that any manager around the world, regardless of where you've been, what you've done, every game poses a challenge. And there are opportunities for you to make decisions in order to affect the game, to impact the game. And when you see that other teams have made adjustments in the way they play against you, and you're unwilling or unable to recognize that these are situations in which you have to counteract those changes, that you have to counteract those adjustments, and you're unwilling to do that, and then the team suffers because of it, and then the results don't come because of it, that's a responsibility on the shoulders, squarely on the shoulders of Maurizio Sarri.
Just briefly, just quickly before we go to Gab, one of the reasons I say this about Sarri, and I talk about flexibility, is for this reason. I think in a normal sense, I could see what he was trying to do at certain clubs. If he was at a club who were known for its patience and known to stand by their managers, I could understand it. But my point with Sarri is at the moment is, and I can understand what he wants to do, but he needs to find, in my opinion, because of who he's working for, because of Chelsea's recent history of hiring and firing, because of the impatience of the owner and the willingness of the owner to cut a manager loose, my point's always been he has to find a way to get results until such time he can bring in one or two or however many players to play the way he wants. If he was a club that was going to give him 4 or 5 years just to crack on, then I would say fine. But he's not at that club. He's at the most impatient ownership in English football. And that's a problem for him.
Let's bring Gab in here. Gab, sometimes on the show I feel like you're pigeonholed into defending Sarri. Let me suggest this. Is there any chance this is a Chelsea problem and not a Sarri problem, when we've seen it with Antonio Conte last year, before that with Moreno? This is not the first manager who has seemed to have a meltdown at this club.
Well, Sarri's not like these other people that you're talking about. So he's not, in his mind, he's not having a meltdown. This business, what Craig alluded to about Chelsea being this incredibly impatient club, well, certainly Sarri's been at more or just as impatient clubs in the past, but it's also kind of a myth. I mean, the last two managers Chelsea went through, Conte and Mourinho, Conte effectively sacked himself, and Mourinho, got the whole club in all sorts of legal issues and to the brink of the relegation zone. So, before that, you actually go through it and don't count the interim coaches and all that nonsense, and you see that actually Chelsea are not this mad sacking club. Abramovich is in a different place and time in his life right now. I don't think he's the same guy as he was 10 years ago. So, and then the one thing that Chelsea really emphasizes, understood, is that this was a massive sea change going from Conte and Mourinho to Sarri. He alluded to it in his press conference today. It's a very different way of playing. They haven't been able to change the whole squad, so he's had to take the time to go and try to get his ideas across to his players. And the club understood that. And the club said, look, all we ask for you this season is get back in the Champions League. We don't think that's too big an ask. And really, it isn't too big an ask. That's a minimum goal. And take the time that you need as long as you hit that goal. They still feel that they're still, on track to hit that goal. And what you said about plan A, plan B, and he referred to it again, this in the press conference too. It's something that Johan Cruyff used to say. It's something that Pep Guardiola, borrowing from Johan Cruyff, used to say. And it's part of Sarri's idea. If plan A doesn't work, execute plan A better. Don't switch to plan B if you think plan A is the right plan. When you screw up, it's either because you have a wrong plan or because you're not executing your original plan better. And he thinks his plan is the right one, and time will tell if that's the case. But that's why he's not going to go and change everything around and put Conte in front of the back four again or whatever, because that's not his plan.
So that's why. So what you're telling me is, and we're going over old ground here, Gab. If you're telling me Pep Guardiola at Man City hasn't changed the formation and the tactics of that team at certain times, then we haven't watched the same game, because he has.
No.
So
Craig,
he has always...
I think there's a different... No, because Pep Guardiola explained this too, because remember, last season in October, people went to him and they said, oh, look, you changed because in your first season, you finished fourth and everybody made fun of you when Clichy and Bakary Sagna ended up in the middle of the park and whatever else. And he came out and he says, no, the concepts are exactly the same. Sometimes we tweak the formation, but the ideas are the same. The concept is the same. The philosophy is the same. But the people had to go and understand the philosophy first, and then I could go and make the change. And that Pep also made the point about in his first season, why didn't he rotate very much? He said, because you can only teach this if you work with 12 to 14 players. And that's something Sarri alluded to as well. Now look, you can think that Sarri's a fool because he thinks that he's Pep Guardiola and he's trying to copy Pep's stuff. But this is directly out of Pep's playbook. Maybe Pep just does it better. Maybe Pep's a better manager. Maybe he's better players. Maybe he's had more time. Maybe it's all of the above. But it's not like he's gone insane. He's following this playbook.
But Gab, we can sit and talk about whether he should change the way he plays or change the personnel or all that. That's great. We can all debate. We all have a different own ideas of what happens on the field. The fact is, none of those managers that you've spoken about turned their club. And you mentioned Klopp, and you're talking about Pep. While they were going through these problems, none of them turned their club into a circus. That's what this is. Every single day, we've got more ammunition from this guy to talk about the things that we think he's doing wrong. Not just on the field, but off the field as well. The way he's handling his players, throwing them under the bus. Again, he starts criticising his best player in Hazard, saying that he's not doing what he's telling him. That's basically blaming him. He's throwing his staff under the bus, as we said yesterday, and he's leaving himself isolated on his own. So the guy's getting everything wrong on the field and off the field.
Stevie, first of all, the only person who thinks that he threw his staff under the bus is you, because he didn't let them into the meeting.
Let me tell you something.
And like I said,
excuse
he
me.
knows his staff better.
This time you need to listen. This time you need to listen. I've been a coach. I've been a manager. I've been in charge of a staff. And it does matter. You cannot isolate your staff for 1 second. I don't know any other manager in the history of the game that has had a meeting and said to his staff, "You're not involved. This has got nothing to do with you. Custard pie, I don't want you in the room." It's an absolute no-no. A complete 100%. And the fact that anybody could argue that that's not wrong is beyond common sense.
Well, then we'll burn him at the stake for that. But I also think that this idea in terms of the reaction of the players, I will be the first to say that there are players who are unhappy. It's mostly the players who aren't playing. But even this Hazard business, right? He's answering questions honestly. And this is, all of a sudden, that turns into people throwing guys under the bus. Guys, this is what we do in the media when we take things out of context, when we're led by headlines in the Daily Mail or in tabloids or whatever. We had the same thing with Manchester United. Remember Pogba walking off the pitch? It turned into some big criticism of Mourinho. Well, that was a zoo. That was a circus too. All of a sudden, when Spurs hit a tough patch, all of a sudden it was Harry Kane needs to get out. Pochettino needs to get out. This is a circus. Arsenal, Mislintat leaves. Gazidis leaves. Ozil's on the bench. That's a circus. Emery's voice is Donald Duck-like. All that is sometimes I think we need to take a little step back and kind of take things in context and then evaluate. Like I said, Sarri's going to live or die by his results and whether he can get the job done this year. His job this year is to get the team into the top 4 and to get them to help to start understanding the kind of football he plays. If it doesn't work, then I think Chelsea will look for a new manager. But to go out and say that he should try to become somebody else and scrimp and say he's not that manager. That's not who he wants to be. He wants to be true to himself, and that is why they hired him, and they understood that when they hired him.
Let's not bat this around too much longer, but Ale, I haven't heard much from you yet.
By the way, don't even ask me about it now. Seriously.
Well, I would just say, Gab brought up Manchester United and Jose Mourinho. How did that end up for both parties involved? For both Manchester United and Mourinho. Is that the end that they both wanted? I don't think so. Did they get to the point that they wanted to get to? I don't think so. I think there is space and time here for Chelsea to fix it and for Sarri to fix it. But there has to be a flexibility about the way he approaches his players and the performances on the field.